Hello everyone. Good day to you. My name is June Lagarde and I'm going to present to you about the soil microbiology. This is a project presentation for the subject Advanced Microbiology and Parasitology. Let's begin. This is how I structure my presentation. The first one is to understand the basic soil microbiology. The second is to state examples of microorganisms in soil, which is the soil biodiversity. And lastly, to understand or to discuss the importance of microorganisms in soils and its impact to biogeochemical cycles such as carbon, nitrogen, and sulfur. To continue, there are some pictures or images that I'm presenting right now. The African savanna, the aquatic or marine ecosystem, and the rainforest. So what comes into your mind when you have seen this very nice views of the natures? Yes, that is correct. That all of them and most of them has some similarities, and that is the use of the soil in them. So as we go along and as we go through, we will understand how is the soil important for all living creatures or for all living things as part of the ecology. I would like to present to you this image, which is taken from the conversation.com, which is entitled The Soil Food Web. Our soils are in trouble. Over the past century, we've abused them with blowing, tilling, and too much fertilizers. You will see or you will notice in here, this is the plant, of course. The plants, they are planted on the soil, and let's admit it that plants has its lifespan. And so after that, after their lifespan, they will become an organic matter or the OM. So these are the waste, the residue, and metabolites from plants, animals, and also the microbes. And so these organic matters, fungi, bacteria, protozoans, and also these organisms, the nematodes, they are going to feed on them. What many think of us just dirt. I mean, to be honest, when we look at the soil, what we are thinking, they are just dirt. But actually, dirt or the soil, it is incredibly complex mixture of rock-derived minerals, plant-derived organic matter, dissolved nutrients, gases, and a rich food web interacting organism. You will see or you will notice that there is a microorganisms right there. There is also a macro or a mid, and there are macroorganisms in this soil food web. We have the arthropods and also the animals that are related via food web. So you will see or you will notice in here the different trophic levels presented. So the first trophic levels, which are the plants, they are autotrophs that can perform photosynthesis. And so the second trophic level, these are the decomposers, mutualists, those who feed on plants or the organic matters of plants, such as the pathogens, parasites, and also the root feeders. The third trophic levels, these are the shredders, predators, and the grazers. The fourth trophic level will be high-level predators, and the fifth trophic levels will be high-level predators or higher-level predators. Now, these microorganisms, they are feeding on carbon. Carbon because we know the fact that carbon, this is the main source of energy of all living creatures. Let's admit that. So to maximize the proportion of carbon or plant carbon that is transformed into soil organic matter, we should aim to support and enhance soil microbiomes that quickly and efficiently transform dead plant materials into soil organic matter. Healthy soils should also contain microbiomes that help prevent disease, cycle nutrients, and help reduce plant stress. See, these microorganisms that are present in the soil, they play a vital role for the plant development and also for the plant growth itself. That because of them, because of these soil microorganisms, these plants, which is our producers, it can help prevent disease. That's one importance, but the other way around, it could be a disadvantage to other organism or other organisms that feed on plants, which carries this kind of pathogens or these microorganisms right there. And for the cycling the nutrients, especially for the soil, so that the nutrients will be able to go back, or that the nutrients can be used once again by the plants or by the other plants, and help reduce plant stress. Okay, so soil microorganisms exist in large numbers in the soil as long as there is a carbon for the source of energy. A large number of bacteria in the soil exist, but because of their smaller size, they have smaller biomass. I'm going to talk about that one later on, about the biomass of the different organisms or microorganisms that are present in the soils. But before that, what is exactly this soil microbiology? So let us define this terminology, soil microbiology. It's there in your screen. You can see that this soil microbiology is a branch of science dealing with study of soil microorganisms and their activities in the soil. Alright, so the main point, microorganisms and biology is the life. So microorganisms and their activities in the soil, their functions, what are their main roles in the soil, and how they affect the soil properties. I've mentioned earlier that these healthy soils, they contain microbiomes so that they can cycle nutrients. So that is one importance of the soil microorganisms. Another, it forms a very small fraction of soil mass. Yes, that is just 1%, because just like I mentioned to you earlier, it is, these microorganisms, they are really, really small. They are microscopic to the point that it's really difficult for us to weigh their biomass, and can be found on the upper layer of soil, which is the topsoil, or the organic topsoil, organic material topsoil. There's a lot of names actually, which is 10 to 30 centimeters in depth. And of course, the microbial population is very high on the topmost layer, which decreases with depth of soil. It's no-brainer that when we go through deeper and deeper of the soil, we will notice that it has different components. I have a presentation, or I have a photo of that one in here, so you can see from this presentation, or from this image, that as we go along, or as we go through the soil, it is becoming compacted, and also to the point that we will reach the fourth layer in here, which is the bedrock. Therefore, microorganism will be lower in here, and of course it must be highest in here. Why? It's all about aeration. Aeration, it means that the oxygen are able to go through, or to pass through. So basically, the microorganisms are highly concentrated in this first and second layer of the soil. So this is the soil profile. Let me just reinform everyone. So we have the organic horizon, organic material horizon, OMO horizon, or whatever it is. The second one will be the A horizon, or the topsoil. The third one is the subsoil. And the fourth one is the C horizon, which is the bedrock. Moving on, you will see, or you will notice in here in this presentation, that most of our activities requires land or require soil. Yes, of course, that would be really difficult if we're going to work without the ground, or without the soil. That's why in every situations, or in every things that everything that we're actually doing, we have to be humble. We have to be humble. I don't know why I'm saying these things, but we have to stay grounded. All right, there you go. So, of course, the factories, our agricultural lands is really difficult to produce basic necessities such as food from the plants without the soil. So I think that's one of the most important thing that I learned in this presentation, to at least respect, pay attention, and even yeah, we have to treasure what we have, even if it's just soil, even if others are talking that this is just dirt. Okay, let's move on. Right. So this one is the functions of the agricultural soils. I think most of us, the information that I'm going to share in here, we are really familiar with. Anchor the plant roots, supply water to plant roots, provide air for plant roots, furnish nutrients for plant growth, and release water with low levels of nutrients. Okay. Now the big question is, who is at home in the soil? So we are entering with the biodiversity of the soil microorganisms. So from my presentation, or from the research that I have taken from the internet, soil microorganisms are divided into one, size, second, species, and the third one is the function. Size, how big they are; species, who they are related to; and the functions, how they make their living. So let's try to figure it out. What are the biodiversity of the soil microorganisms? You will see, or you will notice from here, that there is a macro or a large microorganism. That is ridiculous. So there is a macro or large organism, which is more than 2 millimeter in size. We have meso or mid-size, which is 2 to 0.2 millimeters in size, such as insects. So we have representative examples right there. And we have micro, or the small. So this one will be our main, or our focus for the soil microorganisms. So we have the main characteristics based on size will be less than 0.2 millimeters, such as yeast, and also the bacteria, the gram-positive and the gram-negative bacteria that can be found or living on the soil. Now, to continue with, let us talk about, or let's try to find out the importance of the microorganisms. So the first one, it affects the structure and fertility of the different soil. Fertility of the different soil. So just like I mentioned earlier, if there will be healthy soil, meaning there will be, or it should contain more and more microorganisms right there, in order for us, or in order for the soil to maintain its fertility, and so it can support the growth of the plant living in there. It contributes to nutrient availability. I think this is the connection. This is how they are connected, the fertility of different soil to the nutrient availability in soil, which is very specific with the decomposition, humus formation, nitrogen fixation, and seed germination. So I have some terms in here such as decomposition, nitrogen fixation. These are processes involved in the biogeochemical process, which I'm going to talk about further later on. Manage soil stability by different biochemical process, so that would be checked, and degrade pesticides and chemicals in soil. That is a really amazing job of these microorganisms that because of this pesticides and the chemicals that are present in soil, these microorganisms, they will be able to help the soil to maintain its fertility by removing some particles or some elements coming from the pesticides. They will gonna absorb it, and so they will process it and turn it into a beneficial one. It can contribute to growth and success of the plants and overall ecosystem of a soil environment. So if there will be a healthy soil, if there will be a healthy plant, therefore there will be an overall ecosystem balance for our soil environment. Let's move on with the species and functions. You'll see that there are fungi and also protists present in my presentation. There are slime molds, red yeast, mushroom. For the fungi, for the protists, we have amoeba, flagellate, and also the ciliate. There's the special characteristics of this fungi and protists will be talked about real soon, or after some few slides. So just stick around. We also have the monerans, the bacteria. I mentioned earlier there is a gram-positive and a gram-negative bacteria. Now, the actinomycetes or actinomycete, they are also a kind of bacteria. These are rod-shaped bacteria, and they are gram-positive. Okay, they are gram-positive. Okay, so let's move on. And lastly, for the biodiversity that is included in my presentation will be the algae. You will see, or you will notice in here in the images that I'm presenting, that these algae, they are really clinging to the rocks. Okay, and they got also some purpose why they are clinging, or why they are sticking on the rocks. So that is we'll talk about that one further. Now, the number of species in here, there will be, in a healthy soil, we can see, or we can find, there are several species of the vertebrates, So this one will be the animals that we know, that they are actually like bigger, or I mean macro. And several species of earthworms. So in vertebrates, we have this representative for the invertebrates right here. 20 to 30 species of mites, so we have the insects or the arthropods, 50 to 100 species of insects, alright, and a dozen species of nematodes, the worms, the same from the family of the roundworms, and also hundreds of species of fungi, and thousands of species of bacteria and actinomycetes. Now, soil microorganisms exist in large numbers in the soil as long as there is carbon for their source of energy. A large number of bacteria in the soil exist, but because of their small size, they have a smaller biomass. Actinomycetes are a factor of 10 times smaller in number but are larger in size, so they are similar in biomass and bacteria. So you will see in here that even if actinomycetes and also the bacteria, they are having 100 million to a billion numbers of this is not species but the number of organisms. And so even if they are having differences with regards to their numbers. This one is up to 1 billion and this one's 100 million. They are having the same number of the biomass. All right. And fungus population numbers are smaller, but they dominate the soil biomass when the soil is not disturbed. Bacteria, actinomycetes, and protozoa are hardy and can tolerate more soil disturbance than fungal populations, so they dominate in tilled soils, while fungal and nematode populations tend to dominate in untilled or no-tilled soils. Right. What are the benefits of this diversity or this biodiversity in the soil microorganism? The first one is the ecosystem stability. The second is the ecosystem resilience. So, soil has several ways to accomplish the same function. So there will be a system redundancy, that is for ecosystem stability, and for the resilience, soil has the ability to bounce back from a severe disturbance. Yeah. So because of these microorganisms, this stability and resilience has been achieved, and therefore, if there will be stability and resilience, it could support the life of plants in that particular land or in that particular area. Let's recap. Here are the main types of soil microorganisms. Number 1 is bacteria. Second is actinomycetes. Number 3 is the fungi. Number 4, algae. And the number 5 is protozoa. So let's try to figure it out. What would be special characteristics of these living organisms that are very, very important, and what are the crucial roles they are playing? Because these 5 types of microorganisms, they are, excuse me, they are involved in the organic matter decomposition. Organic matter decomposition. Okay, so the first one will be the Monera or the bacteria. So the population increases rapidly when organic matter is added to the soil. We know that bacteria, these are the basic life forms, and bacteria, they can really duplicate, or they can reproduce as quick as possible that they can, as long as the factors are available for them. Quickly degrade simple compounds such as sugar, proteins, and also the amino acids. It has a harder time degrading cellulose, lignin, and also the starch. So this one will be polysaccharides. This cellulose, lignin, and also starch, these are polysaccharide. And we know that this bacteria, they do feed on a simple sugars. Yeah, that's their food. Okay. Now, if there will be if there are presence of cellulose, lignin, and starch, it requires longer time for them because it needs to become downgraded, or it needs to be broken down into simpler form, into disaccharide, and then after the disaccharide will be the monosaccharide. Cannot get at easily degradable molecules that are protected. Second is the actinomycetes. I've mentioned earlier that these actinomycetes, they are very, very important, or I mean they are gram-positive, and they are rod shaped in here. So they are the cleanup crew. They are considered as that one. They can become dominant in the final stages of decomposition and attack the highly complex and decay-resistant compounds such as the cellulose, the chitin, and also the lignin. Now, going back, this bacteria they are having hard time decomposing this or degrading this polysaccharide. But actinomycetes, which is also a monera, they has the ability and they can easily um, decompose this cellulose, chitin, and also lignin. Cellulose, this one is actually part of the cell wall of the plants, and the lignin, um, this one will be also part of the like the stem, the xylem of the plant, or the vascular bundles of the plant. Okay, let's move on with the fungi. Now, still, everyone is involved in here. So if it is fungi, these are the from the family of the um, mushrooms. So it grow more slowly and efficiently than bacteria when organic matter is added into soil, able to degrade complex organic molecules such as cellulose, lignin, and starch. It has similarities with the actinomycetes and give other soil microorganisms access to simpler molecules that were protected by cellulose or lignin. So you will see from the images right here. Okay, so these are some of the roles of this fungi in our soil ecosystem or soil environment. Organic matter. What about the algae? So algae can make its own nutrients through a process known photosynthesis. They are green, non-vascular plants. You can see from the picture right there. Okay, and whenever there is a sunlight, therefore algae can make their own food. Okay, you know the process. And um, this algae, it can be they can live in a soil surface with or without exposure to sun rays, and they can also live below the soil surfaces as long as the algae has uniform temperature and moisture condition. That's the most important information about this algae present on soil. Now let's move on with the protists, nematodes, and also the predator. They feed on the primary decomposers such as bacteria, fungi, and also actinomycetes. They release nutrients or nitrogen contained in their bodies of the primary decomposers. So this one will be the nitrogen. Later on, we are going to talk about this. How are the nitrogen containing compounds are being recycled in the ecosystem via the form or via the cycle from the biogeochemical cycle known as the nitrogen cycle. That's what I'm talking about, the biogeochemical cycles and the microorganisms. So the biogeochemical molecules, or I mean biogeochemical cycles, this is all about recycling the matter in the ecosystem, or specifically the matter, on soil matter. Okay, the first one is the carbon cycle. What's in here, we're going to tackle about the roles of the microorganisms in the cycle. Same thing with the nitrogen cycle. It has 4 main characteristics or steps or processes involved, such as ammonification, denitrification, nitrification, and nitrogen fixation. And lastly, we have the sulfur cycle. Carbon cycle. The carbon cycle describes the process in which carbon atoms continually travel from the atmosphere to the earth and then back into the atmosphere. Carbon is released back into the atmosphere when organisms die. Volcanoes erupt, fire blaze, fossil fuels are burned, and through a variety of other mechanisms. So you will see in here, in this diagram, which I know Most of us are very familiar with this three cycles actually, the carbon cycle, the nitrogen cycle, and also the sulfur cycle, because in the advanced ecology, we have an assignment about these things or about this biogeochemical cycle. So just to make it real quick, so carbon moves from the atmosphere into the plants in here via the photosynthesis process, and then the carbon moves from plants into the animals via feeding. Carbon moves from plants and animals to the soil via defecation, and then the carbon moves from living things into the atmosphere. Which part is that? So that is the respiration process. The byproduct of respiration will be the carbon dioxide, so it will go back into the atmosphere. And then the carbon moves from the fossil fuels to the atmosphere when fuels are burned. Take a look at this one. They are main source of air pollution. And the carbon moves from the atmosphere into the ocean. So you will see from here into here. So this one will be photosynthetic fixation, wherein plants, algae, cyanobacteria are actually feeding on them or requiring this carbon containing compounds. That's it. There you go. Next will be the nitrogen cycle. So this is a repeating cycle of processes during which nitrogen moves through both living and non-living things. The atmosphere, the soil, water, plants, animals, and also bacteria. In order to move through the other different parts of the cycle, nitrogen must change forms. So we have different processes involved in here in the nitrogen cycle. We have nitrogen fixation. Alright, we're in nitrogen gas. Nitrogen fixation must be here. Nitrogen fixation is from nitrogen gas into NH3, which is the ammonia. So that's one. The free nitrogen gas in the atmosphere will be converted into ammonia via nitrogen fixation. And this particular fixation, it requires microorganisms such as the non-symbiotic azotobacter. It's really difficult to say the names of this bacteria, cyanobacteria, Clostridium, and also it can also happen via symbiotic, such as the rhizobium. Rhizobium is the most I think I am very familiar with. And then there is a nitrification, wherein this during nitrification, ammonia is converted into nitrites, NO2, which is, again, there is microorganisms right there needed in order for it to be converted. And why it has to be converted? So that it can be available for the plants, for their nitrogen source. Right there. Next will be assimilation. Nitrates will be converted, nitrites will be converted into nitrates via nitrobacter. It's in here. Okay, so we call this process as assimilation. And therefore, if the nitrates are available, or the NO3 negative are available on soil, therefore it will be easy for the plants to use for their protein. So what's the main purpose of the protein in plants? So that basically it's all about the growth and repair. Growth and repair. I think that would be all for that, nitrates. And then after that, there is an ammonification. Before I forgot, so ammonification, this is organic nitrogen compounds you can see the decaying organisms, aerobic and anaerobic bacteria and fungi are working together in order for them to um, decay or to speed up the process of decaying for this um, plant remains. And so a modification will happen, which these organic compounds, nitrogen compounds, are converted into NH3, and so the cycle will be repeated until it reaches the nitrates right there. And after that, we have the so-called denitrification. Denitrification, if there will be a lot more nitrates available on soil, which is not being absorbed by the plants, therefore, these nitrates will be converted into nitrites once again, and eventually will be converted into nitrogen oxide. So we call that process as denitrification. Denitrification has um, uh, it requires microorganisms such as Pseudomonas, Bacillus licheniformis, and also the denitrificants. Okay, that would be. And of course, if that would be, denitrification will happen. So the nitrogen gas and also the oxygen gas will be separated from one another, and the nitrogen will become free once again in the atmosphere. And so the cycle will be able, or it will just be repeated and repeated all throughout. So this presentation or this slide is just the summary version of what I have just explained. The nitrogen fixation, the nitrification, assimilation, ammonification, and denitrification. So let's move on with the symbiotic nitrogen fixation. You will see in this particular slide that there is an impact of rhizobia inoculation on soybean. So if there will be an inoculated, you will see that plants will grow taller, which is, I don't think it's visible, but it's kind of greener in here, healthier in other words. So symbiotic nitrogen fixation, many bacteria have the ability to fix or convert atmospheric nitrogen into forms that plants can utilize. So in these root nodules, there are microorganisms right there, specifically bacteria, a rhizobia. Okay, there you go. And then these microorganisms, some of these bacteria form symbiotic relationship with leguminous plants. So there will be an attachment that will happen in between them through their root hairs, and the plant provide rhizobia with a steady source of food, which is the sugar, and then the rhizobia provides the plant with nitrogen or the nitrogen nitrate, and then this symbiotic relationship between them will be very, very effective for the nitrogen fixation. So once again, I will repeat, if there will be rhizobia present on the root hairs, so the plant will gonna supply sugar for this rhizobia, and rhizobia will gonna fix nitrogen or the nitrates for them for better growth and for fastest growth for the plants. Lastly will be the sulfur cycle. So sulfur cycle, circulation of sulfur in various forms through nature. Sulfur occurs in all living matter as a component of certain amino acids. Sulfur is one of the components that make up proteins and vitamins. Proteins consist of amino acids and contain sulfur atoms. Sulfur is important for the functioning of proteins and enzymes in plants, and in animals that depend upon plants for sulfur. Plants absorb sulfur when it is dissolved in water. Animals consume these plants, so they have so they take up enough sulfur to maintain their health. Okay, so in this particular diagram, so we start with the sulfur dioxide, which eventually will become sulfate in the atmosphere. And so whenever there is a precipitation, therefore, there will be sulfur that will be able to land or to precipitate on the soil. And so there will be some elemental sulfur, microbial oxidation, and so this one will be separated with one another. So the sulfate will be separated from the hydrogen dihydrogen sulfide. And then there will be some reduction, assimilation via the via microbes or via microorganisms such as the Theobacillus and also the purple and the green bacteria. And so that would be available on the soil for the plants and also for the other organisms requiring the presence of the sulfur. So this is the same thing. Proteins and waste products, because of the microbial activity, it will be converted into amino acids in plants. And so these amino acids, it will become a dihydrogen sulfide, and this dihydrogen sulfide will be converted into SO4 using an energy, and the SO4 will be used through assimilation, and then it will be available for the consumers as an amino acids. Okay, let's move on. I think I have packed a lot in here. Here are the disadvantages of the soil microorganisms. Contamination of the crops by pathogenic microorganisms, bioaccumulation of toxic chemicals, increase in soil salinity, disequilibrium of nutrients in the soil, and diseases on plants and animals. Disadvantage of microorganisms, such as pathogenic microorganisms present in agricultural soils, can be harmful, or it has can have a harmful effect on crop producing. Number one is the pathogenicity and disease, which is correct. This soils, since they are the habitat of these microorganisms or these microbes, of course, when we touch them or incidentally or whatever it is, accidentally, and then these microorganisms that are living in there, when it landed on our skin or our mouth, therefore it could lead into disease, resistance to crop control products, poor soil health or reduced fertility, and poor crop health or poor yields, and lastly the crop loss. Now, these are the threats to microbes in soil. Soil degradation, which is the erosion, invasive species, global warming, land use change, chemical pollution. These are accelerated by the anthropogenic activities, by human activities, and climate-driven factors such as temperature, precipitation, wind, or rain intensity can contribute the distribution of the soil organic matter. And some of them, or to add, oxygen limitation can also modify microbial activity, favoring microbes that can withstand anaerobic conditions. This alters the type of distribution of all microorganisms found in the rest of the soil's foodweb. So we call this soil microorganisms as the chemical engineers. So we have the chemical pollutants such as pesticides, the genetically modified plants, and industrial chemicals. This is the possible impacts of chemical pollution on soil biodiversity and its impact on soil organism. So we know the fact that whenever there is an imbalance in the soil ecosystem, therefore plant growth, producers growth, And so the rest of the um, ecological food web will be affected too. So to summarize things up in here, I would like to call out that the healthy soil ecosystem is extremely diverse and complex. Of course, it includes these microscopic organisms, really different kinds of organisms, and of course, it has different functions. And a diverse soil ecosystem is um, stable or stability, or it has stability and resiliency. And soil organisms have developed many complex interdependency that benefit agricultural soil functions. And lastly, we have the so-called soil management activities that significantly affect the life in your soil. Number one, such as the increased intensity of tillage, which tends to decrease the microbial diversity and microbial biomass. Application of lime or fertilizer to infertile soil tends to increase microbial activity and biomass, and the addition of organic materials such as manure tends to increase microbial biomass and activity. So, what would be the effect of these soil management practices on soil organisms? Maintaining high soil organic matter levels and residue covers on soil surface tends to increase microbial diversity and activity. Pesticide applications have variable effects on microbial population. These are the references that I use in my presentation as part of my research. And of course, last but not the least, we are having this pandemic situation, so don't forget to wash your hands every single time. Did I mention that one correctly? Every single time. Just don't forget to wash your hands. That's all. Bye bye. Thank you for listening to my presentation.